Are you enjoying the writing process, or is it
Ooh.
pretty stressful?
That's a good question. I think I go back and forth between being like kind of stressed out about it and like really enjoying it. I think it really depends on like what part of the book I'm writing and if I feel like I like kind of know what I'm doing. Cuz I mean today I just had, this morning I was like, "Oh, I have my deadlines coming up in September. I still have a lot of the book to write. I know I have a week off next week because I'm going on my honeymoon. So I'm not going to be writing at all next week. So I know I'm going to have to make up that word count to be able to hit all of my goals on time, right? And I have all these interviews that I'm scheduling. And so I think this morning I was like a little overwhelmed. I was like, oh my gosh, like I have all this stuff that I have to do. And I was kind of looking at like the list of things that I have to write. And I was like, oh, I don't really know where to start. But then I started kind of like looking at these sections and I was like, oh, hey, like maybe I can like restructure this a little bit and it'll make more sense to my brain. And I started kind of like poking at different sections, just writing a little bit for each section instead of putting so much pressure on myself to have to write out really big chunks at a time, and just kind of like going to different parts and maybe going to a part that I've actually already written and kind of revising it a little bit or adding like a new paragraph or something like that so that I could hit my daily word count that I'm trying to get to, and actually like enjoy the writing that I'm doing without putting so much pressure on myself to do a certain section at one time or have to have this part done by then. It's really just a little bit more like, hey, like I'm feeling like I have a handle on this part of the book today and I know what I want, at least some part of the section of what this part is going to look like today. And so kind of going with my gut, I guess, and letting that kind of like drive what parts I'm writing when. And that's been making it a lot more enjoyable. I think when I kind of like, I don't know, if you're ever doing something you love that's creative, if you like, and if you've ever watched the movie Soul, I thought that they did a really good job of talking about the flow state. So when you kind of like get in the zone, when you're like writing something or you're like painting or doing something fun that you love to do, and you really just like feel like you're in the zone on it, that's when I love writing. Um, and I'm also like a writer who really enjoys the kind of revision process. I really like having like a chunk of text that I can kind of go back into and like poke at and be like, hey, this like paragraph needs a little bit more description. Hey, like this could like actually work really like better at the top of this section instead. So I really like that process instead of the kind of like initial just kind of like plunking out a lot of words. I like to think about it as kind of like sculpture. If the, bear with me on this metaphor for a second. So like when you start with a, you know, I guess I think when like Michelangelo started on a big sculpture of his, right? All he had was this like huge block of marble and a chisel, right? And so this big like first part of writing is really labor intensive. So when he was making those sculptures and he had this big block of marble, he had to chip away at like the huge chunks of the corners to even just get down to the like kind of vague shape of what one of his sculptures like the David was going to look like eventually. So he had to do all of that labor to get rid of like all of that extra marble. And so that's kind of what I feel like this like initial writing process is like, of just kind of like getting all of those words down on the paper so that later I can kind of go in and like fine tune and actually like start to see like the facial features of the person that I'm sculpting. And so like that, it's starting to feel like I actually can like see like the voice and like the tone of the book and how things are flowing together. That is kind of like the more fun thing for me when it starts to kind of like become more clear in the writing versus just kind of like putting a bunch of ideas down on paper. That's something that's like a little bit messier for me and takes just like a lot of work and time. So yeah, when I get to that revision process, that's a little bit more fun for me. But yeah, I think I do like the flow state when I can just like go at it.